I actually don't know where my screen is. Huh. Are we
Hi,
on?
Alan.
Hi
Hi,
there.
Alan.
How are you? Hello,
Good.
hello.
How are you this morning in New York? How's it going there?
Well, I'm great, thank you. Life in New York is, as well as everywhere, has been a little challenging, but I have to say, life has turned a lot back to normal. I'm happy to be busy, and most everybody I know is doing well and healthy, so that's good news. How about you? Where are you? And
That's great. That's
how
great.
are you?
I'm in Santa Fe today. I go kind of back and forth. Well, I haven't been traveling since COVID, but have clients back east as well. So, yeah, good morning. Good morning from beautiful Santa Fe.
And good morning from beautiful New York City. It's 80 degrees and clear as a bell. And today we're talking about client relations and discussing object items and topics that designers ought to consider when being interviewed, or because it's a two-way street. And as you know, we're interviewing clients. We all want the job, but we don't want just any job. We want the right
True.
client. We want the right budget. We want the right communications and so on. So that's not, that's really not, Victoria, I think it's an under-discussed aspect of what we do, because I certainly know that when I go into a project, an interview, I really want to get that job. But do I want that job is the question. And so what should we, a number of years ago, I wrote a couple of essays, and one was from the perspective of the designer, and the other was from the perspective of the clients. So as I understand, we're going to just toss some ideas back and forth about what our experience has been, and some ideas for those who are listening on one side or the other, or both sides of that equation. So I don't want to hog things. So why don't you start with some of the things that you value and want to ask of your clients or think of as you're interviewing?
Well, I think you're 100% right that I just spoke about client presentation, and that means that I already have the right client, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, getting in bed with it, an interview can be like a blind date. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know who this person is. We don't really know if we like them, and um, you're in this relationship with them sometimes years, 2 3 years.
Sure.
So it's so important to not be afraid to ask the big questions. It's not just about where do your kids go to school, and oh my God, I love blue too. That's such a coincidence, I mean,
I love
that's
blue. That's
I
nuts.
I love blue. Let's move on. Sign the contract. So
I
um,
like green, as in money.
oh, you and me both. Yeah. Well, we've both been doing this for decades. So yeah, I like it when they just give me their credit card, right? So I can keep it on file.
I have
But it's
I've yet to have that. So let's go.
but it is sort of a taboo topic, if you will. People feel afraid to sit down and ask the really important questions. And I've been doing this for years. I remember being so afraid when I wanted a job so bad. I was a single mom for years, so it was super important for me to keep those pillows being sold. But it's hard. I may not have $100,000 to redo my bedroom in one fell swoop with an 8-week installation time. So it's hard to assume that somebody else does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't ask them how
It's
much
really
money are
mm,
you willing to invest in this, you're in trouble before you start.
well, it's and that's a tricky one. I'll pull on some of your experience as well as mine. One of the things that I find is that people are very hesitant to give a number. They don't know. They simply don't know. And that's an honest answer. They just don't know what this stuff costs. And especially those who haven't been around hiring a company. it's very different than going and buying individual items on your own and shopping the sales and doing the legwork. But when you have a full company with backup and back office administration and supervision and shopping, and that's all before you get to the intellectual property and our creative talents, it's a very
Yes.
expensive process. So people really understand or are bewildered by what that is, unless they've done it, enough times. Even so, I find that getting getting someone to put a budget number on may often come with some fear that we're going to run away with that number. And that my goal, and this is something to express to the client, is, well, first off, we have to know if it's worth our time and be really straightforward with that.
If we're going to make money,
Well, yeah, if
we
we're going to make money,
need to, we need to make money. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
like as we often say, it's not a it's not a hobby, um, and and
Yeah.
but this also, I want to give as much of a finished product to my client as I can squeeze out of that money, as long as it's reasonable. I'm not going to.
Yes.
There are things I won't do, because they often cost more money and time on our part, which would be, really shopping bargain, 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 bargain. There's, so we really giving us some idea of what a budget um, is a good introduction to the next thing that comes to mind when talking with the client, and to express from our point of view. We want to establish trust. We want to establish how we work,
Hmm.
and really to introduce, if it's not already there, the reality that we are here as advocates and not as adversaries. And I think people are very protective of their money. They're also protective of their aspirations. They're protective of their insecurities. They're protective of their point of view. Um, they want to own and manage and super manage, and kind of go into competition. So here's our floor plan, and then the next day you say, hear from so and so, and that person says, well, I was up till 4 a.m. on,
Yeah.
and I found all of these things.
I have a Pinterest board. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
exactly.
Pinterest board. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's okay if it's established that that's a working relationship, that we can be compensated for, and B, that we don't have this adversary. I really do find something, because there isn't going to be the vision that comes from someone who doesn't know the big picture. But we don't want to paint that person into having no opinion, So it really is establishing that trust. We are your advocates. We're advocating for you. We're advocating for the process. We're advocating for our office, our employees, our vendors, the whole, and, um,
And I think that you're 100% right. Um, two things that you brought up, and one, this is funny because we've all, it's not funny, but it is funny. We've all been in the situation when you're interviewing your client. I remember this so well. Once, I guess I was probably in my early 40s, and it was the interview process with the husband and the wife, right? The decision makers. And we were talking about doing a number of rooms in their beautiful home. He was a very successful man. And they started arguing in front of me. And, and I remember, like, I'm sitting, he's at the head of the table in the dining room. She and I are across from each other, and they're having this argument. And it wasn't just, oh, honey, no, really, I want a floral sofa in green. It was,
character assassination.
oh my gosh. I didn't work with them. Obviously, I thanked them, and I'm running to my car, and that is something that if you see that happening in the interview process, this is not going to be a happy road trip.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
that's something that, again, people don't talk about that, but it happens.
It does happen. And also, establishing who is the decision maker. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not both in it. But there's got to be somebody who's saying, because there is something absolutely true about, yes, we are your advocates, not your adversaries, but both sides playing against the middle can be an awful thing. We really, if we're going to move this forward, you as a client have a responsibility. And again, we have to be careful phrasing this because we don't want to make somebody feel like we're running the show, it's my way or the highway, but there's a responsibility as a client. If this job is going to go smoothly, on time and on budget, then we need your attention. We need you to be decision makers,
Responsive. You need to be
responsive,
responsive.
and decisive, because it's just I have more than a few handfuls of projects that were really, maybe eventually they came out wonderfully, maybe eventually they fall apart. And the reasons I'm bringing those on both sides up is that the process was really imperfect and sometimes disastrous because of lack of communication, lack of getting back, lack of being available, changing of minds, and then bickering between the two or three, or I don't know, the devil's in one's own head. Who knows? But it's
right. And I think that that interview process, it is hi, how are you? Where do your kids go to school? Oh my gosh, we went to the same college. All the niceties that make that initial connection. To make everyone comfortable so that you can go into that second, deeper level of questions that really make or break that relationship. And I think that it is the opportunity for us to explain to them how we run our business. We don't want them to tell us how to run our business. I tell folks frequently, with my little, lipstick smile, I don't know what you do for a living, but I know that you're really good at it. But what I do for a living is decorate. And I think it's great that we both have sort of our own, roads, because I do want them to know, I don't want them to know that I'm the boss, but I'm the boss and I'm running this project for you, right? You're paying me to do this. I don't go sit in the dentist chair and explain to him exactly how to fix my tooth. That's what he does for a living. So that respect, I think, is really important at the onset. And you can kind of tell if they value what we do and will respect what we do. And like you said, Alan, there's the folks that have worked with the designers before. And then there's the folks that, and I love asking that, have you ever worked with a designer? Wonderful. And I'm thinking, cha-ching, as opposed to, okay, let me explain to you how this is going to go. And then you cross your fingers, right?
Yeah. Well, educating it's an educational process, from the get-go. And, even with those people who are, the ideal client. And I remember, I started working with Mark Hampton years ago. That was the beginning of my business. And I've known Alexa, who we all know and love. And early in her career, taking over her father's business, she described her ideal client. So I'm giving her full credit for saying this, and that is someone generally older. If it's a couple, generally older, they've done this before, hopefully many times, while they grew up with it and understand the process. They have better things to do than to micromanage this. Those three things are so important.
We love that part.
That's the ideal. I'm not saying I have yet to have a turnkey, here's the money and, we'll show up at the end and, we'll love you. I am very collaborative, and it has a lot to do with being available. Educating somebody new to this, everything from the shock of what it costs to the imperfection.
How long it takes.
And then it's fallible. By the time you get that sofa in and it's touched, 10, 12, 40 people's hands, right from the initial to the delivery and installation, it's troubleshooting and being nimble and so on. And that's an important thing to express from our point of view, is that it's only with experience that we can be nimble that way. It's only with, a big part of our business is troubleshooting. It's a lot of, client relations, and it's anticipating what it is that can go wrong and doing our very best. The only way to do that is to have done this many times and maybe sadly having things fall through the cracks and having to scramble and having to do this and figuring out how to make things right when they don't go perfectly. And these are elements that I think it's important to express. It doesn't necessarily come right up at the beginning. I think the one thing that you said that's really important about finding out where their values are. One of the things that I find that's so telling, let's say the relationship, it's a husband, wife, husband, wife, and wife, is their communication and observing that. If they have children, where are the
Yes.
children and where are the children in the arc of their lives at home? What is their are they my ideal clients? I have a family I've worked for a number of times. They're devoted to their children. Now they're not princes and princesses. They're devoted in the most loving way, supportive way. And when I see that, and I see that above all, they want their family to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
and for this to be as pain-free for everybody. That's a very different scenario than my son or daughter is royalty, and you're going to have to deal with that aspect of things. Different
Mm-hmm.
priorities, different
True.
values.
That's
Doesn't mean
true.
we can't do it. Doesn't mean we can't do the latter. It's just I like to see
Sort
a
of the
good.
dynamics,
That's right.
the dynamics, and you do pick up on those cues, I think. And I and I'm sure you do too. I mean, look, Alan, I've been doing this for a long time, so we can, in our little brains, we can come up with all the bad interviews we've had and how now we've come to this point, and um, no interview is scripted.
Right.
You have to go with the flow. You have to listen to what they're saying and pick up on those cues. So it's not as if we can tell folks, first you ask this, then you ask this. If they say yes, if they say no, you have to just be an awesome listener, which is key to what we do anyways, is listen to what our clients want. But we've all been burned. We thought we listened well. I prefer to do a lot of my big interviews in person. If it's a simpler consultation, I mentioned in my last presentation that I charged for a 2-hour consultation. It's a $500 flat fee, and that for me is a wonderful way to open up the door.
That's
I
right.
can see in that consultation when I'm in their home if it's going to be a good fit for me, because we pick up on a lot of cues that tell us while we're picking up on it because we're looking for it. They
Right.
may not know that I'm in a way already interviewing them by just standing in the house. I mean, what if, I can't say I'm a neat freak. I always have a pile of clothes sitting in my bedroom that need to be hung. But what if I walk into a house and they're a little bit more of a hoarder or a
Right.
little bit messier than I'm prepared to deal with? Well, that may
Right.
not be my client.
Right.
What if you walk in and they're in this multi-million-dollar house and they still have IKEA? That may not be my client. So
Right.
there's cues like that that you can also get from your silent interview, if you will, by just
Right.
observing.
It's absolutely right. It's the same. It's interesting that you said it's like a blind date.
Mm-hmm.
When you check out, one of the first things you check out, what shoes are they wearing? You know,
Shoes and purse and diamonds. Shoes and purse and diamonds.
I know
Sorry, but it's
ridiculous, but
true.
you get all these cues, from the ground up, right? Um, um, One thing that I wanted to ask, because I know we have. I'm looking at the clock now. We have 7 minutes, and I want to, I know we could talk for hours. We've already established that. One of the things that is, I think, really vital at the front end of a project, maybe you don't want to do it right away. Just as you said before, we're not here to say, you do it in this sequence, but before you really get going, who's the decision maker, as we said before,
Yes.
and beware, folks, that many times, if it's this is going to, I'll just run with it. A man and wife, often hear, well, this is all her stuff, and it's all for her, until it comes down to making the decision, much less paying for it. Then all of a sudden, those rules are off. And I think you can actually address that, because tried and true, this happens many, many times, is, a word final. Are we going back on it? Have you agreed? Have you communicated? Do you have a respect for each other? Here's another thing. How are we getting paid? Everybody has their own methods. I have some clients who write checks. I have some very, very wealthy clients who still send a handwritten check. I have other clients who, pay by transfer, and some people who handle their monies and this and that. But, it's really important to know the process about how this goes, because, there's an approval. Yes, I'll give you approval, and we're set to go, but the check doesn't come. Who are we talking to? How are we doing this? Let's establish this front end, because I don't want to, we have other things to do other than calling and chasing money.
We're not bill collectors. We don't want to be bill collectors.
Right. So this is really participatory. Be available, be decisive, pay your bills on time, and let's have, a serious, and also I think there are times when we may have to redeclare some aspect of our relationship or the scope of the work or so on. I think it's really important. And very sincere to say, this is, I'm working in a collaborative sense. The lines of communication are open. And it doesn't mean the lines of being vague or changing your mind and so on, but how are you doing? In fact, just rolling back the script here a little bit, have you worked with somebody in the past? Tell me about that experience. Was it good?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, because when they start trashing the last one, right? They start trashing the last one. It's like when you're on a date and they're telling you all the bad things about their ex-husband, ex-wife, whatever. You kind of want to run if this is not
productive.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Hey, Victoria and Alan, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that we get some of our questions started. I'm going to read out. I'll probably have time for 2 or 3 questions. So, first question.
I'm sorry, I wasn't even looking at that. Guys, let's ask.
No worries, that's why I'm here. So the first question is, how do you handle a situation where, as a designer, you're ready with a presentation, but then the client has a whole different perspective and wants his own things implemented? How do you defend your design while not making the client uncomfortable?
Well, it depends. If the client has been participating in this process and you were working on that given, and they change their mind midstream, then we have in our contract, if the project changes substantially due to things that you bring to the project, we have terms that we bring to that and that address that. And we don't have enough time to talk about that, but there has to be a caveat in your letter of agreement. There's a whole conversation about letters of agreements and what should be in it. I think is really important, and maybe that could be one of our next ones, because you really want to cover yourself for something like that.
I do the same thing. I have a scope that's a separate addendum that's personalized to each client. We vary from the scope, that's fine, but then we amend the contract.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Next question. How do you categorize ideal clients from those who are not?
I think we've covered a lot of that. I mean, idealized would be, from my point of view, I'll repeat, Alexa Hampton's description of somebody who's done it before, somebody has maturity. I don't want a young Turk who's out to testosterone race me on every decision, and understands and respects the process and has better things to do than to micromanage us.
Yeah, and you'll agree, Alan, I can always tell when I'm in that interview process, whether it's the phone or in person, if I start a sentence, for example, and they cut me off and go, wait, but I want to know, or, it's that race car driver thing. You can sort of tell, this may not be, you can tell.
No, your intuition is worthless.
Follow it. How many times did we not?
Far too many.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we can squeeze in here? Or
I can have one more question and you guys can just give your final thoughts. So this is a question that says, do you have any advice for those just starting out? What can you do as a student to prepare ahead of time for your future career? So this is a loaded question, but maybe just give your initial thoughts on this.
I'm gonna answer that one first, Alan, because I think that internships, mentoring, being with a seasoned designer and understanding and listening is invaluable.
Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. You know, if you have the opportunity to work with somebody, I mean, I don't know if that's answering the person's who's asking this, because how do you get with that person? Again, I think we don't have enough time to do that. Just hit the pavement and do some research. I didn't do it, but I landed on my feet. I don't recommend that to anybody, because I was interviewing with anybody from, pillared interiors from by Doris to, Mark Hampton. Anybody would take my calls. But what are yours? What do you like? What are you interested in? Get in touch with them. Handwritten notes, calls. Folks, texting sucks. All right, new generation, dump it.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, make appointments. Your voice, your sound of your voice, your inquiry, your enthusiasm, that's going to show, and that's going to get you in the door.
And think of it a little bit as dating. Think of it a little bit as dating. Don't be afraid to ask some questions of
That's right.
the potential client as much as they are asking questions of you.
I'll leave one thing here. Once you get into a position, regardless of where you are, let's say starting at the lowest, I hate to say that, beginning, make yourself invaluable. Yes, yes, yes. All the time. Make sure that if there's a little scrap of plate paper on the floor in your office, bend down and pick it up. Keep the place tidy. Once you make yourself invaluable, you are in the door. Figure it out. That's even before creative talent, I think. Team play.
Thank you
advice.
so much, Victoria and Alan. This was such a wonderful session, and thank you to everyone who joined. So this session is over now, but our next one starts right away. So we'll see you on the next Zoom link. Thank you so much.
Okay,
You're so welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.